Hey guys, and welcome back to Autumn Leigh at Home. Today we are going to finally have the day where we get to work with our peach peels. So if you have been following along with me, that's great. If not, I will fill you in. We took peaches in a recent video and turned them into canned peaches. And I will, if you haven't seen that video yet, I can add that on to the end of this one. But during that video, I said save your peels in your pits, because now we are going to take the peels in the pits that have been in the freezer since then, and we're going to turn them into peach jelly. This is something that my kids have been waiting for all year. We made it last year, they loved it, and they've been begging for it for multiple times for a while now. And this year I'm going to try to make more than I did last year. I may have to make 2 batches just because I'm still learning as well. So you'll be learning with me. We can learn together. If you have any questions, of course, comment below. Or if you have any advice of things that you see that I could do better, could do different, help us grow with you as well. So follow along as we go on this learning journey together. And I'm going to do a voiceover for the next part of it. That way, again, I can teach you as I'm doing it. And since I've only done it one other time, this will be my second time. I don't want to, mess it up. So follow along with me and we'll get started. So I finally got an apron because I have gotten really bad about splattering things all over my shirts, and I'm realizing how many shirts I am ruining because of it. So we're gonna see how this apron works and see if I like it, and we'll go from there. Today we're going to be water bath canning peaches, which I'll explain a little bit more in a minute. And we're going to use a recipe from the ball canning book, as well as a recipe, kind of a mixture between that one and the recipe that I found online that uses less sugar. Hey dear. My husband just got here. If you're new to canning, today we're going to be water bath canning the peaches. Any foods that have a higher acidic level, such as peaches or tomatoes or anything like that, you want to use the water bath canner for. If you have or are canning foods such as chicken or green beans or anything like that that are more basic, then you would use and need a pressure canner. But today we're just able to use the water bath canner since we're doing peaches and peach jelly. And we're going to get started with sterilizing our mason jars. Some people are able to use and like to use their dishwasher to do this. I don't. I prefer sterilizing them in the water bath canner. So I fill the water bath canner up with water, fill the mason jars up with water, and make sure that they're about 1.5 inches. The water is about 1.5 inches over the mason jars, and then make sure it comes to a rolling boil, and that's where if you try to stir, the bubbles don't go away. Once it's at a rolling boil, you boil the jars for 10 minutes and that sterilizes them. Once they're done, you just turn the temperature down and let them stay on the stove so that they stay warm. While the mason jars are sterilizing, I went ahead and got our peach pits and pills and filled a pot with water and put the frozen peach pills and pits in the water, and I'm going to let that come up to a boil. While both of those are on the stove, I'm just kind of waiting and hanging out. So I decided to go ahead and get my bag of peaches and cut a bunch up. My kids' school is very strongly pushing healthy snacks, and I thought that this would be a great opportunity to make some healthy snacks at home. So we are getting slices of peaches, putting them on the dehydrator, and I'm going to make some dehydrated peach slices as a healthy snack for them to take to school or just eat here at home. I have found that they love dehydrated fruits, and I am taking full advantage of that. So now that it's peach season, we are going to go ahead and make dehydrated fruits and vegetables, possibly. Fruits for sure, vegetables we'll see. But while everything is boiling and coming up to a boil, my stove can be a little slow. This is something that I'm doing to kind of fill the time and use my time wisely. If you're new to canning, this is actually a really good place to start is making jelly, just because it's pretty simple and straightforward, especially with water bath canning. I know I kind of mentioned this in the canning peaches video, but I do want to encourage you guys again and just let you know, try one thing at a time, because it can be a little overwhelming when you first start out canning. However, if you learn one thing at a time, you'll look back and be able to say, wow, I have really gained a lot of knowledge, and practice makes perfect. So again, you'll see in this video, I'm not going to be perfect at it either. This is a learning process for me, and we don't really have anybody in our family that cans or still cans. They may have canned in the past but don't really do it anymore. So we haven't really, this is something that I've had to teach myself, and I want to encourage all of you guys that it is doable to teach yourself, and practice makes perfect. So canning jelly is a good place to start because it's kind of hard to mess up. I did think I burnt the peaches a little bit in this video. I think I cooked them a little too long, but the jelly still turned out fantastic. So I'm not really too worried about it. And I will say, if you can jelly, this is a great Christmas present, or, especially to give family and friends and family friends. If you can jelly, especially during the season in which the fruit that you're canning is that season, so like peach season, strawberry season, that kind of thing, you're able to get the fruit for a pretty good price, especially from farmers. And it's a good time and a good chance for you to be able to practice and learn, and jelly's a good place to start because you can also give these as good Christmas gifts. So just an idea, but I want to encourage you guys to continue. Don't give up. If you mess up, that is okay. You can try again. What you just saw was me mashing the peaches just to get all the pulp and all the flavor that I possibly can. That's not a required step. That was just something that, I learned from in the process of doing this as well. And then now I am siphoning off of the impurities. So you'll see kind of like a white foam gather around the edge of the rim. So throughout the canning jelly process, I would encourage you to try to get all of that out, because the more you can get off the impurities off the top and the foam, the better the jelly will look at the end, so the more clear it will look. And again, if we're going through all this work to have peach jelly and even possibly use them as Christmas gifts, then we want to make sure that it looks the best that it possibly can. So just while you're standing there, go ahead and skim off, not siphon, I don't know why I said siphon, skim off the foam off the top and around the edges, and just discard it into a bowl, and you'll end up throwing that away. You don't use it for anything, but go ahead and do that to help your peach jelly look better. I let the peaches cook down in the water just to try to get as much peach juice as possible, but again, I think I let them burn a little bit, which changed the taste just ever so slightly. It wasn't terrible, but it is something that I would encourage you guys to be careful of. Now I'm taking that peach juice and all the pulp and pits and all of that and trying to separate them. I have been trying to figure out the best way to do this, and this method worked better than what I tried last year. Last year was terrible, so I think this year that worked better, but I'm sure there is still a better method of doing this, because I was using a strainer and a bag, and again it worked okay, but I think there are still improvements that I could make. So if any of you guys have suggestions, comment below, please. That would be great. But I am separating these two, and I'm going to let the bag drain the pulp out, or excuse me, not the pulp, the juice, the peach juice out. And that way I can get as much of the peach juice as possible in order to make the peach jelly. The recipe calls for 3.5 cups of peach juice and 4.5 cups of sugar, as well as 1 box of Sure Gel per recipe. Now again, I'm kind of combining the ball canning recipe as well as a recipe I found online through another YouTuber, and I can share both of those in the comment or in the description. That way, if you want to go check out the other video that I watched, that's how I learned, and I wanted to do it correctly, so I also followed the ball canning video, but the ball canning book uses the ball canning liquid pectin, and I didn't have any of that. I just had the Sure Gel. And I didn't also like that the canning book requires you to use 7.5 cups of sugar for every 3.5 cups of peach juice. That just seemed like a lot. So I went with the 4.5 cups of sugar, and again, it turned out fine. And to be honest, I probably could have used even less than that. And I doubled this batch. I ended up having enough peach juice for two canning recipes, and I just went ahead and went for it. I know I said I was going to try to maybe do two different batches at a time, but I think I just wanted to go ahead and try both at the same time. After I drained the peach juice and I separated the pulp and peels and all of that out of the juice, I put it back in a pot and back on the stove. And here you see me adding the Sure Gel Pectin, and that's what's going to allow it to become that gel, that you typically see for jelly. And you want to see pink peach juice, and mine is pink, but again has that little bit of a brown hint to it. So the brighter the pink, the better, or the clearer the pink, the better. And so again, that's a learning curve, but I just wanted to also take the time for those that are new to canning to go through all of the supplies that I'm using in the canning video. Obviously, you see the water canner in the back, and then that first thing I held up was a measurement stick to measure headspace, and then a cylinder to add the peaches into the jars easier, a gripper to grab the mason jars out of hot or boiling water, and then the magnet stick that allows you to pick up the lids and stuff. And there you see I accidentally flung some onto the ground, the stick onto the ground, because it kept sticking to everything. But that is mainly the pieces that I used, and then of course the lids and the rings as well. After adding the Sure Gel Pectin to the peach juice, you want to make sure you bring it to a rolling boil, which again is where you're stirring and you can't get the bubbles to go away. That's a rolling boil. Let that boil for a full minute, and then it's time to add the sugar. So here you see me adding the sugar, and it's going to take a little while to come back up to a boil. So make sure you, again, after bringing it to a rolling boil the first time with the pectin, you want to bring it to a rolling boil again for a second time. And as you can tell, my stove is a little bit slow, so it took a little while to do that. So I had to pass the time by. That was the hardest part for me, was this took a while just because my stove is a little slow getting heated up and heating up water. But you want to bring the sugar and all the other mixture up to a rolling boil, and again boil it for at least a minute. I would say make sure you're doing it to that all the sugar is out and melted through, and not out, excuse me, but melted, and you can't see any clumps of sugar. So at least a minute. If you need to go a little bit longer, that's fine. Just be very careful not to burn it, and stand there and make sure you're stirring it the whole time. While all of that was happening, I took the lids and the rings and put them in warm water on the stove and let them kind of simmer just a little bit. And there, I just burnt myself on the jelly. It got on my hand. It did not feel good, but I would make sure to just kind of warm up the lids a little bit. Do not heat them up too much, because that melts the rubber seal and you don't want that to happen. But you can just put it on a low and make them nice and warm. That way, the goal is to make all the things about warm and the same temperature. So like the jelly that you're putting in the jars themselves, the lids, all of it needs to be warm. And again, the water, when you put the jelly jars back into the water to water bath can them, also needs to still be warm. So see, I have the water bath canner still on the stove. That way it keeps the water warm while I'm filling up the jars. So as we go through this, you see me taking the jars. I took the jars out of the pot, and I'm adding the jelly into the jars, and now I'm measuring headspace. For peach jelly, the goal is to have 1/4 inch headspace, and that device, that little stick, has the measurements already on there, and all you have to do is use. Once you have your headspace set and you have that 1/4 inch headspace for all the jars, you want to take white vinegar and rub the rims and try to get all the jelly off the rims. That way you get a good seal when you put them back in the water bath canner. If you don't, you run the risk of them not sealing properly, and then of course you don't want to lose out on any peach jelly because you're doing all this hard work. Now I'm taking that little magnet stick and I'm putting the rims on, and then you want to try to make it finger tight. And what that means is picking it up, just be very careful because all of it's still hot or warm, and you want to tighten them as much as you can without completely cranking the lid on. You just want to do it finger tight. And then once you're done with that, you're ready to put the jars back in the water bath canner and put them back on the stove. The fall canning book gives you all the details of how much headspace and how much time you need to water bath can them. So for peach jelly, the headspace was 1/4 inch and the time that you needed to water bath can them was 10 minutes. So once you put them back on the stove, you need to bring the water up to a rolling boil and let them be in the water bath canner in the rolling boil for 10 minutes. Once you're done, leave them on the stove. You don't want to yank them right out right away. You want the water and everything to kind of just cool down to room temperature at the same time. That way you don't run the risk of cracking any of your jars. When it's time to take your jars out, just set them on a cloth. That way you're not putting a warm jar on a cold counter and running the risk of cracking your jars again. Also, let them cool for about 12 hours or so. Make sure they're fully room temperature, and then you are ready to take the lids off. And hopefully in this time you're hearing a ping sound because that means that they're sealing. But make sure you take the lids off before putting them on your shelf. All right, so it's the end of the day, and our mason jars cooled in the water bath canner, and now I went ahead and just pulled them out. So they are all set. They're looking pretty. Now I will say I'm a little nervous. I don't know if you can see it here. I'll come a little closer. You might be able to see it a little bit better right here. I'm a little nervous because they seem a little bit brown, not as pink as the last batch. And I was also a little bit nervous that maybe I had overcooked the peaches when we were cooking them down. And so I'm still curious how it's going to taste. Now with how much sugar we put in, I'm sure it will be fine, but I don't think that these are going to turn out quite as good as my last year batch. However, it's, you know, I tasted it earlier, it was good. I think it's not quite as on top of, or quite as good as it was last year, but still will be great. So I also have extra peaches. I ended up buying a whole nother bag of peaches last time I went to our local farmer stand, and so because I wanted to do these dried peaches, and those are still drying, so they're not quite finished yet, but once they're done I will jar those up and put them on the shelf. So we were able to preserve peaches in multiple different ways today. One being that we used the peaches and the peels and pits from the last batch of canning peaches, and we were able to turn that into, ooh, did you hear that? That's what we want to hear. We were able to turn them into peach jelly, as well as when I went to buy another batch of peaches, I was slicing those really thin, putting them on the dehydrator, and we are able to now have dried peaches on the shelf that will last about a year. They love dried fruits, so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to grab the peaches while I still could, and I'm saved those pits and peels again, and I was sticking those in the freezer again. That way, if this did turn out bad, I would still have an option of doing at least one more batch that I could maybe be a little bit more careful and watch the peaches a little bit more carefully. So, but again, I think these turned out okay. They're a little bit browner than they are pink. You kind of want to see more pink than anything, but we will try, and I'm giving myself grace because it's a learning curve. This is all stuff I'm still learning as well. We're learning together. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share down below. And again, I will add the other video onto the end of this one. That way, if you want to follow along from the beginning and learn how to can peaches, you're welcome to join us, as well as if you don't have peach pits or peels, you can use peaches too. That was just a way to kind of use up the scraps rather than throwing them away, because they were good. You can still get the flavor out of them to make the jelly. So that's what we did today, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and share down below. Comment down below, and I hope to see you guys next time. Thank you for joining me at Autumn Leigh at Home.